I can't imagine anybody disliking you.
Oh, please. Do you want to know, ironically, who dislikes me the most sometimes?
Who?
Myself.
Oh, me too.
Oh.
But I guess you've asked me now, you've asked me, what I would do to combat the hate, right?
Yeah.
But what do you do?
Okay, that's a great question. Now,
You've been doing it a little longer than I have.
Well, it's funny because when I was a kid, you starting with E.T., it was the first time I was introduced to film reviews, which are basically social media.
Yes.
But I felt like all these reviews, and it could be a Charlie's Angels, it could be an E.T., it could be The Wedding Singer, everything in between. If you read reviews, just like on social media, you are pretty much guaranteed a 50-50. Some like it, some don't. So you've got to be willing to bear down and brace for it.
Now that relatively, I think, innocuous clip of Drew Barrymore showing a moment of empathy with a now pretty notable trans activist has set the internet a storm.
Has it, Briahna?
It really has. A number of conservatives have accused Drew Barrymore of kneeling at the feet of someone that they describe as a man, and that it's somehow putting feminism and women at the literal feet of a kind of transgender agenda. Let me not put words in people's mouths. Xavier de Rousseau, who's affiliated with PragerU, tweeted, "Does Drew Barrymore not realize that she's literally on her hands and knees for a man?" Famous Twitter account, Cat Turd, tweeted, "Wow, Drew Barrymore is
You're not kidding. That is a very prominent right-wing account. Continue.
Yeah. Cat Turd, more famous than us all, tweeted, "Drew Barrymore is on her knees bowing before a man. How feminist of her." Charlie Kirk tweeted, "Drew Barrymore kneels for Dylan Mulvaney, a man pretending to be a woman, and one of the most bizarre interviews you will ever see." And they're all tweeting a screen grab from it before Dylan gets on the ground, and so it's Drew Barrymore kneeling, and people are very upset by this.
But now I don't know, because I've never watched the show before, and I think the last Drew Barrymore related thing I consumed was 50 First Dates, which is a movie I love.
Great film.
Great movie. She is often on the floor with the guest?
Yeah,
is
so here's
the case?
here's the thing that my reaction was, do you not ever watch the Drew Barrymore show? I mean, it's not like I'm sitting around watching daytime TV all the time, but I've seen enough of these clips go viral where she does this very big, radical empathy thing a lot on her show. She's often using her own life experience to have very heartfelt moments with guests. It's part of why people love Drew Barrymore. She's lived her whole life on the public stage because she was a child actress, because she's kind of coming from this Hollywood family, and because she's very publicly gone through her own issues with addiction and whatnot, that people have a lot of empathy for her, and she channels that with her guests on her show. So she's on the floor with her guests so often that it provoked an article in Decider magazine a couple of years ago called "Why Does Drew Barrymore Keep Interviewing Guests on the Floor?" And it has some images of some instances of her doing
because she's beholden to the trans activist, Briahna.
Well, funnily enough, none of the other guests discussed in that article were trans. They're people who I don't necessarily like. One instance was with Hillary and Chelsea Clinton. Take from that what you will. Another instance,
she bows down before the Democratic war machine, Briahna.
Right. Well, the problem with that analysis, of course, there's a number of actors and actresses that she has sat on the floor with. And when asked, why, she said there's something about the floor. It's just there's an intimacy. She said that in an exchange with actress Regina Hall when she asked her to get on the floor. So look, it's very obvious from watching the show that she just does it to connect more and to seem more casual, like you're building pillow forts with your girlfriends and sharing secrets as a child. And it does, to me, speak to a certain histrionic path that some aspects of the right have gone down with respect to some of these trans issues. What do you think? Is this evidence of the fact that some of the concerns about, woke indoctrination or trans issues, taking over, what have you, have sort of jumped the shark?
Well, there has been this debate going on in maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks, a little bit on the right. Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles, two people who speak on transgender issues a lot from the conservative standpoint, very, very, very against it, both affiliated with with the Daily Wire, both talk a lot, give speeches, and they've been, and their language about transgender issues is very condemning, as strong as you can possibly imagine. There was a whole debate over whether they were, Knowles was saying eradicate transgender people, or he did not say that. He said eradicate the transgender ideology, but it was perceived as, eliminationist kind of rhetoric. Then others saying that this is not helpful, that they're being so kind of ugly in their commentary that this will turn people away. Actually, we interviewed someone on the show last week who was formerly affiliated with the Daily Wire and said that the cruelty of the rhetoric and the focus on consenting adults, she doesn't want, this person who used to write for the Daily Wire doesn't want to have anything to do with that, is concerned about how we're starting these procedures for young people and thinks that's in the legitimate domain of public policy, but not the rest of it. So there's a question, and then Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles type people will respond and say, well, what are you doing? This is how I am just as outraged about this as I seem, and I want to shame people for having anything to do with this movement, which I don't feel about it the way that they do. If I did, maybe I would agree with that tactic.
Yeah, but, something that more left-leaning people and liberals have been saying about this whole thing is that they don't believe, even if there were some legitimate concern about what the medical standards are, them evolving, ours being different than in some other countries in Europe that we would respect from both a civil liberties and medical perspective, that the nature of the complaints that have been risen by the right are not actually well matched with those concerns, and that they're just trying to get a crack in the door to actually, yes, condemning transgenderism, not having a conversation about, this procedure or that, or what the timing of it should be, or whether there should be any tweaks in the recommendations here, or whether there's some overreaches or mistakes that are made in discrete scenarios, people transitioning and things like that, but whether or not transgenderism should be eradicated, as Matt Walsh said. And what does that mean? What does it mean, what is transgenderism outside and apart from transgender people? Mm-hmm. And that is why people, I think, went to the conclusion that he actually is advancing a kind of eliminationism and a kind of genocide of trans people.
To be fair to him, he said, and I don't agree with him, but he said he wants to eliminate the ideology in the same way you eliminate.
How do you eliminate an ideology? What does it mean to eliminate the ideology of let's say, homosexuality?
Right.
What does that mean about actual gay people?
Right.
And if you can't articulate what the difference is, then are we just parsing hairs when we're talking about whether or not he's actually advocating for genocide?
I think again, I don't want to put words in his mouth. I think he would advocate banning all sorts of procedures that facilitate even adult men becoming
women. So this is the issue. As much as people say, well, this is just about the kids and being very reasonable, and I think that some people really do feel like their only problem was with the kids. I think the guest we interviewed last week, sincerely, she says she has trans friends, and she sincerely is only interested in whether medical interventions are too much at a too young age. But the fact is, when you see the reaction of the same people who say it's just about the kids to an adult woman kneeling on the floor with Drew Barrymore, it really undermines all of those kinds of arguments.
And I want to quickly address the actual advice that was being discussed there, which I gather was about, how do you respond to mobs of hate that get sicked on you? And Drew Barrymore was saying, it's like she remembers reading movie reviews and they'd be so nasty, and that can have the same kind of effect. If you're a public person, if you're a celebrity, if you're engaged in creating content for the public, you are going to receive criticism, sometimes good faith criticism, sometimes praise, sometimes a lot of attacks and a lot of negativity. And she was saying, Drew, I think, was saying that just don't read them. That is the right advice. Like, log the F off. If you don't want to, it is a healthy thing. More people should practice disengaging from social media, from the comment section, because it can get nasty, and you're never going to make that go away. And the more you kind of complain about, woe is me, I have to read so much criticism, I think most people find that unsympathetic.
Yeah, I think that's
broadly,
true.
But for your own health, just tune it out.
Yeah, I think that's true, but that also doesn't mean it's not impactful when, Drew Barrymore is literally...
No, I know it isn't. No, because it is impactful, it is important for you to tune it out.
It's one thing to ignore it when you're not that famous, but Drew Barrymore is literally trending right now. Dylan Mulvaney was trending earlier. I don't know if she still is. And Dylan is also having to face, look, not just bad rhetoric in the public sphere, but a whole slate of legislation that's coming down the pike, dozens and dozens of bills that would make her life as an adult who has chosen to transition impossible, or force detransition, or make it illegal to dress in the way that she wants in public. And that's a little bit more than just social media attacks. And so, this is what a lot of the rhetoric has led to. People like Charlie Kirk, who are relatively very mainstream in conservative circles, are out here participating in this effort to make an adult's decision to transition and live in the world.
I don't support any of that legislation.
Unbearable.
Consenting adults should do whatever they want.
Do you think this is a problem for the right not to be coming out more strongly against this kind of thing? Like, have they gotten over their skis if we're in a place where people like Charlie Kirk and PragerU employees are misgendering this person and saying that, Drew Barrymore is in the wrong for being literally on her hands and knees for a man? Like, if institutions like PragerU and TPUSA, who Charlie Kirk works for, are not condemning that kind of behavior, do you think that's actually going to hurt their other kind of political?
It probably won't hurt their podcast numbers or their attendance at their events or anything like that. Does it hurt the broader conservative movement? I would say yes. I'm always warning the conservative movement from getting over their skis, as you said, on a whole host of issues. So maybe this is the same. I don't know. Although I think they're certainly on more, regardless of whether you think it's right or not, the concerns about children specifically, I think are more broadly shared outside even the Republican coalition. But yes, some of this goes, and regardless of whether it's good or bad, I just think it's wrong. Whether it's good or bad tactically or politically.
Yeah. Well, look, let us know what you think in the comments. Let us know if you think that Drew Barrymore, generally speaking, needs to get up off the floor.
But we won't read them for our own mental health. We're going to not read them. So, no, I'm just kidding. I do. I browse, I peruse the comments. I know you do.
It depends on the segment.
All right. We'll have more Rising right after this.